Arthur Miller's The Crucible, first performed in 1953, is one of the most important works of 20th century American drama. Set during the Salem witch trials of 1692, the play follows a community consumed by accusations, fear, and suspicion as personal conflicts grow into a devastating public crisis. Miller's literary style combines historical drama, tragedy, realism, and allegory, using the events of Salem to comment on the political persecution and anti-communist hysteria of his own era. Powerful dialogue, dramatic irony, and escalating tension reveal how quickly fear can overwhelm reason and justice. The play explores themes of mass hysteria, reputation, guilt, integrity, power, authority, deception, and the conflict between individual conscience and social pressure. The Crucible remains important because of its timeless warning about what can happen when fear replaces evidence. Accusations become weapons, and people must choose between protecting themselves and standing for the truth. The story starts in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, a Puritan town where religion and government are tightly bound together. The community appears strict and orderly, but underneath that surface are grudges, rivalries, land disputes, and resentment. In Reverend Parris's house, his young daughter Betty lies unconscious in bed. Rumors of witchcraft are spreading because Parris has caught Betty, his niece Abigail Williams, and several other girls dancing in the forest at night with Tituba, an enslaved woman from Barbados. Parris is terrified, but not only for Betty. He worries that his enemies in Salem will use the scandal to push him out of his position as minister. Abigail insists that the girls were only dancing and that Betty fainted from fright when Parris discovered them. But Parris knows he saw more than that, including strange movements around the fire. He questions Abigail's reputation, especially because Elizabeth Proctor dismissed her from service and now avoids church. Abigail denies wrongdoing and claims Elizabeth hates her. Thomas and Ann Putnam arrive with news that their daughter Ruth is also strangely ill. Mrs. Putnam has lost 7 infants, and she believes witchcraft may have murdered them. She admits that she sent Ruth to Tituba to contact the spirits of the dead babies and learn who caused their deaths. The fear in the room grows sharper. Putnam urges Parris to announce that witchcraft has been discovered before his enemies control the story. When the adults leave, Abigail, Mercy Lewis, Mary Warren, and Betty speak privately. Mary is frightened that they will all be accused as witches. Betty suddenly wakes and cries out that Abigail has hidden the worst truth. Abigail drank blood as part of a charm meant to kill Elizabeth Proctor. Abigail strikes Betty and threatens the girls, warning them to say only that they danced and that Tituba conjured spirits. Anything more, she says, will bring deadly consequences. John Proctor, a local farmer, enters and sends Mary Warren, his servant, away. Proctor is respected by some for his honesty, but he carries guilt because he has had an affair with Abigail. Abigail still desires him and believes he loves her. Proctor admits he may still feel some tenderness, but he insists their relationship is over. When Abigail insults Elizabeth, Proctor threatens her and makes clear that he will not leave his wife for her. The room fills again with worried villagers. When Betty reacts violently to a psalm, Mrs. Putnam takes it as proof of witchcraft. Rebecca Nurse, an older and deeply respected woman, calms Betty simply by her presence. Rebecca believes the girls are caught in childish hysteria and warns that talk of witchcraft will inflame Salem's existing conflicts. Proctor agrees that Parris should not have called in a witchcraft expert without consulting the town. But Putnam and Parris push forward, and old disputes about land, church authority, and status rise quickly to the surface. Reverend Hale arrives from Beverly with heavy books and confidence in his knowledge of witchcraft. He questions Parris, Abigail, Tituba, and the others. Giles Corey, meanwhile, innocently mentions that his wife Martha reads strange books, and that he once had trouble praying while she read. He does not mean to accuse her, but in Salem's growing atmosphere of suspicion, even careless remarks can become dangerous. Under pressure, Abigail shifts blame to Tituba. Tituba, frightened and powerless, first tries to defend herself but soon realizes that confession may save her. Hale encourages her to turn toward God, and Tituba begins naming people she claims she saw with the devil. The Putnams suggest the names of local outcasts, and Abigail joins in, followed by Betty. The girls begin calling out names in a fevered rush, and what began as an effort to hide their own behavior becomes the beginning of a full witch hunt. By Act 2, Salem has changed. The court is arresting people based on the girls' accusations, and those who refuse to confess risk hanging. In the Proctor home, John and Elizabeth eat dinner in a strained silence. Their marriage is still wounded by John's affair with Abigail. Elizabeth urges John to tell the court what Abigail admitted to him, that the girl's sickness had nothing to do with witchcraft. John hesitates because Abigail told him this when they were alone, and Elizabeth's trust in him falters again. Mary Warren returns from court, defying orders to stay home. She gives Elizabeth a puppet she made while sitting in the courtroom and reveals that dozens of people are now accused. She also says Elizabeth's name was mentioned but that she defended her. Elizabeth immediately suspects Abigail is trying to remove her so she can have John. The danger that felt distant is now inside their home. Reverend Hale visits the Proctors to test the Christian character of their household. He questions their church attendance and asks John to recite the 10 Commandments. John remembers most of them, but forgets the one forbidding adultery, an omission that painfully exposes his hidden guilt. At Elizabeth's urging, John tells Hale that Abigail privately denied any witchcraft. Hale is troubled, though he still clings to the court's authority. Then Giles Corey and Frances Nurse arrive with terrible news. Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse have been arrested. Rebecca is accused of murdering Mrs. Putnam's babies through witchcraft, while Martha is accused over a neighbor's dead pigs. The logic is absurd, but the court treats accusation as evidence. Soon, Ezekiel Cheever and Marshall Herrick arrive with a warrant for Elizabeth. They find Mary's puppet and discover a needle inside it. Cheever says Abigail has claimed that Elizabeth used witchcraft to stab her with a needle. Mary explains that she put the needle in the doll herself, but the officers arrest Elizabeth anyway. John rips the warrant in anger and demands to know why the accusers are always believed. After Elizabeth is taken away, he orders Mary to testify that the girls are lying. Mary is terrified of Abigail and warns that Abigail may expose John's adultery. Proctor is shocked that Abigail has spoken of it, but he decides he must risk his reputation to save his wife. In Act 3, the court is in session. Giles Corey interrupts, claiming that Thomas Putnam is using the trials to gain land. Frances Nurse and John Proctor also come to challenge the proceedings. Mary Warren testifies that she and the other girls have only been pretending. Deputy Governor Danforth, Judge Hathorne, Paris, and Hale question her intensely. Danforth views any attack on the girls as an attack on the court itself. Proctor presents a petition signed by 91 landowners defending the good names of Elizabeth, Martha Corey, and Rebecca Nurse. Instead of accepting it as evidence of character, the court orders the signers questioned. Giles then accuses Putnam of prompting his daughter to accuse George Jacobs so Putnam can buy Jacobs's land after his execution. But Giles refuses to name the witness who told him this, and Danforth arrests him for contempt. Abigail and the other girls are brought in. Abigail denies Mary's claims and quickly turns the room against her. When Mary is asked to faint on command, she cannot do it, because the pressure and group hysteria that allowed the performance before are absent. Abigail then acts as if Mary is attacking her with an invisible spirit, and the other girls follow her lead. Desperate, Proctor calls Abigail a whore and confesses their affair. He explains that Abigail wants Elizabeth dead so she can take her place. Danforth brings Elizabeth in to test the claim, believing her to be honest. But Elizabeth, trying to protect John's name, lies for the first time, and says she dismissed Abigail only because she suspected something without cause. She does not know John has already confessed. Her lie destroys his proof. Hale now sees that Abigail is false and begs Danforth to reconsider, but hysteria takes over. Abigail and the girls imitate Mary and accuse her of witchcraft. Terrified, Mary breaks under the pressure and turns against Proctor, calling him the devil's man. Proctor is arrested, and Hale, horrified by the court's injustice, denounces the proceedings and quits. In Act 4, months have passed. Salem is collapsing under the weight of the trials. Crops are neglected, animals wander loose, families are broken, and fear spreads everywhere. Abigail and Mercy have run away after robbing Paris. Reverend Hale has returned, not to support the court, but to beg the prisoners to confess falsely so they can live. Danforth refuses to postpone the hangings because doing so would suggest that the earlier executions may have been wrong. Elizabeth is allowed to speak with John in jail. She tells him that many people have confessed while others still refuse. Giles Corey has died under torture, pressed by heavy stones because he would not enter a plea. By refusing to plead, he prevents the court from seizing his land, allowing it to pass to his sons. His death becomes a final act of resistance. John struggles with whether to confess. He does not see himself as pure like Rebecca Nurse, and part of him wants to live. Elizabeth refuses to judge him, telling him that the choice must be his. At first, John agrees to confess, and Danforth is delighted, but the court wants the confession signed and posted publicly on the church door. John realizes they do not only want his life, they want his name, his honor, and his lie to support their corrupted justice. When Danforth asks John to accuse others, John refuses. He will speak only for himself. Then, after signing the confession, he cannot hand it over. He tears it apart, choosing death rather than allowing a false confession to stain his name and strengthen the court's lies. Hale and Paris plead with Elizabeth to stop him, but she will not take away the moral freedom he has finally claimed. John Proctor goes to the gallows with the remaining condemned prisoners. Afterward, Salem does not remain untouched by what it has done. Paris is voted out and disappears from the town. Rumors say Abigail becomes a prostitute in Boston. Elizabeth later remarries. Years afterward, the excommunications of the condemned are reversed, but the damage cannot truly be undone. The farms of those executed remain empty for years, leaving Salem marked by the fear, pride, revenge, and false righteousness that destroyed its own people.